Okay, so here's this the spindle adapter for the CST-8 Monroe Mechanical Calculator. It's just a bunch of scrap I've made up, made from scrap spindle here. This shaft was out of an old photocopier, bits of junk that I've had laying around for decades. It happens to have this nice little rubber knob on it. I thought I'd leave that on just in case, and I just cut it down. I machined a flat for it that's very much a nice drop-in replacement for the motor. You see that? It's kind of nice, little placement there. It goes into the shaft of the motor, the gearbox, the planetary gearbox there. And this guy has some holes in it to mount into slots that have on the original motor mount locations. And what's nice about this little junk piece of shafting is it happened to have a nice groove in it for a clip, so the bearing, you have your thrust up against that guy there. And I machined an extra bushing here. Really wasn't necessary, just to go into the same little feature that the bushing bearing would have for the motor to help align it a little bit further. And like I say, I put some slots in here because it's a little easier to be able to clamp and everything in place rather than do some precision machining and then pressing everything. This way everything's all nicely aligned and everything will work pretty well. And I think it'll go in there pretty well. I'm still debating which length belt to use. I got a number of different belts, but probably this one. So I think, it's one of those things where if ironically I talk about do CAD and everything, but this is one of those that designs it as I go thing, and I think it goes in pretty well. I mean, I've test fitted it a few times as I went and had to change something every once in a while, so it's one of those that snaps in there pretty nice. And see that? I don't know. Maybe you can. It goes in there pretty well. The machine turns the machine pretty nice, and then I get that bushing in there, and he slides in there really nice. And then with the slots, I should have it pretty good. I'll mount this guy up and just see if I can turn it by hand a little bit. So we'll see in a moment. Okay, I got the adapter block put in, and I think it's going pretty good. It rotates pretty nicely. The machine seemed a bit draggy at first, and then I appeared to have cleared something just in my moving it around, fiddling. I saw something move around, and it disengaged. The biggest problem is the motor would run, and I could never get it to cancel or stop its cycle. It was always stuck in the cycle of something, calculation, and everything was jammed and everything. And of course, I haven't done anything since it's been clean, other than fiddle with the manual jam release thing, which never could really release everything, it seems. But now everything's moving pretty nice, so it's kind of encouraging here. Maybe I can get the motor to run, the stepper motor on this guy, and give this a go here. Right now it looks like it's finally freed, because otherwise all kinds of things were running, moving around, and now it seems like it's cleared. Maybe between the cleaning and just a last little moment of moving about here, I may have finally cleared some of it. I'm kind of optimistic. I suspect there's plenty going on that still is not right, but okay, so we're kind of getting closer on this build. Some of the little demo things of what I have to go through on these sort of things is these are little risers to elevate these rails so that a bunch of these mechanisms are clear and you get a little bit better view of everything for the motor mount. And at times you got places where you got these screws that are in the way of these standoffs, and you had to machine some flats there. The other problem is the distances from these screws and here to these screws are 3/8 of an inch difference. So it's one of those things where the manufacturer, when they're building this thing, somebody designed this plate, somebody else designed this plate, and they all come out a little differently. It's hard to say how these things happen. So anyhow, as we're getting closer, I'm just about to the point where I can start to put some of this guy back together at this point, and then I can kind of figure out the mounts for the motor mount stepper motor plate here, and then I can get that going. So making progress. Okay, so back to the Monroe calculator here, and I've done a few more mods trying to figure out how to mount the stepper motors, and I've decided that I needed to put the slot in here in order to make certain the belt would clear, and so everything wouldn't have to sit up so high, because I've gotten as far as I've mounted these rails on this guy, and that way you can kind of see the mechanism a little bit better, and some of the mechanism isn't so close to the ground, with some question marks whether or not some of these actually might even been pressing on the ground. So that's taken care of. And I took the little rubber wheel off. It was a nice little rubber wheel, but I didn't really need it. So that gives me a little more clearance, because otherwise it was looking like I was going to have to be like, by the time I added a mount plate and the motor mount block and everything, and cleared this structure here, it was getting up really high, about 3 inches, probably a 2 or 3 inch elevation there. So that'll reduce that, and not only that, when the motor is spinning clockwise, the tensions on this side, it'll be nice and tense, but this side will be less tension, and that belt could flop around and might have jammed it into that, wedged into that tight clearance. But now that takes care of that. So another nice solution. Everything always takes longer. Okay, so I got the frame, adapter frame on. I'm pretty happy with it. It came out pretty decent. Still got to figure out the motors itself, but not too bad. So the next thing is figuring out the motor mount here, and let's see here, the bearing, the pulley here. I'm not worried about bearings now. Have it here. Here. Gotta come up with a tensioning mechanism yet. Yeah, looks pretty good. So I'd be generally happy with that. Next thing is to figure that out. Probably slot on the bottom of this guy, and then a couple holes on the plate, and then probably a little square plate inside that acts as a nut, and then I can just wrench it from underneath. Making progress here. Finally getting to where I think I might be able to move this thing. Okay, so basically done with the stepper motor modification to the Monroe Mechanical Calculator. And the last little step here was I took the knob that's on the opposite shaft of the motor and put on this little crank I had laying around. So at least until I get the stepper motor electronics all sorted out, I can at least hand crank it. And it came out pretty good overall, I'd say. I kind of question whether or not the amount of force that's required is a little on the high side yet. Maybe my pillow block is a little draggy. I'm not sure. I can't spot any issues, so I think I'm good. I can't see any troubles. Right now I don't have anything gauged, of course, and that's why I kind of wonder whether or not it's really working or not correctly. I might have some bindy somewheres, but I'm not familiar with what's going on here. But as far as I can ascertain, I don't think my pillow block is causing any troubles to the original planetary gearbox. And I think it's pretty happy. I don't see any issues. But I can see it all. It's pretty nice. And the belt clears pretty decently. And everything seems to move pretty smoothly. I got the belt tension on the lighter side. I had it pretty tight for a while there, so you could almost see the frame flex a little bit. And right now it's not doing that. When I apply power, I might adjust the tension a little bit more. But this is a timing belt, so you don't need really high tension on it. Looks, I think, pretty good overall. Question mark is, what can I do here with it? I don't know if anything's jammed still. I mean, I'm sure things are jammed, so can't really tell that anything wants to move. But there's something going on. Oop. Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, boy, there's a lot of force there. So we still definitely have things jammed. Yeah, I would have. I mean, I can't imagine that the mechanics of that would have been that much force. That's just way too much force. Yeah. Let's see here. Anyhow, I don't want to damage anything, so I don't know that released. And it's still pretty jammed here. And I'm pretty sure the motor goes clockwise. Well, I was hoping it was jam-free there, but it doesn't look like it still is, so I still got to sort that out. But that's long hours of sorting. That's just the whole point behind this thing. See if I can figure out what it is that's causing that. I mean, like you say, this little guy here, that little part I took off, I apply a lot of blame to some of my woes, but I don't think that's probably it. As it is, things like carriage motion should be. I mean, these two buttons here do the carriage motion, and those don't want to move. Some of these I can't remember what they do because I don't, of course, have the plates on. At least a lot of these buttons move freely. Addition doesn't want to move at all for some reason. I think this is addition, this is subtraction. Subtraction wants to do something. But they're engaged. So right there, it's trying to do something. And it's moving along, and then it slips. And I don't know if it's... I can't imagine that. Seems like a lot of force. I don't think that motor could... The original motor could apply that force. I think the stepper motor might be able to, but you don't want to apply that kind of force to something, so I'm hoping I'm not stressing anything too much as it is. So, anyhow, next thing is the stepper motor's drive electronics. I have a box I'm thinking about using and control electronics and so forth. The box, as usual, is too big or too small. Of course, too small doesn't work, and too big is inconvenient, but at least it's workable. So that's kind of the next project. So I think that's it for now, and maybe we can use this hand crank to fiddle with it some more until then. But there you go.